Hello, good morning everybody, and good afternoon to those of you who are in the Central Time Zone or in Mountain Time or East Coast Time. This is Arvind Rajan, and I'm from Astute Business Solutions. You are here to attend a webinar that we're presenting today, and the topic is PeopleSoft Fluid UI and how you can go mobile with Fluid applications. I still see a few people trying to get onto the webinar, so I'll just give them a minute or so to get settled in. Your phone lines will be muted during the presentation, and then if you have any questions about today's topic, please use the chat feature on Join Me to post a question to me, and you should find my name in the chat list as Arvind Rajan, and in brackets you'll see presenter. So I'll try my best to answer all of your questions in the time allocated today. For those questions that we are not able to answer, we'll certainly note that down and post a written FAQ back to all the attendees. And for those questions for which we do not have answers, we'll do our best to find those answers for you and get back to you. Today's topic is Fluid applications, and there's a lot of excitement around this. Obviously, the response that we're getting for this webinar is one measure of how important this topic is, and it's top of mind to everybody. It certainly is when we talk to customers at conferences and when we go out and do product demos. This is new and it's exciting, and everybody's curious to know how they could benefit from this and how they should take advantage of Fluid applications. For those of you who have trouble logging in, you should see a chat message in there posted by one of my colleagues. There is a phone number, so you can use 860-970-0010, and the conference ID is 475-693-737. So hopefully that works. The link for the webinar, for those of you who are only on the audio bridge, if you go to https://475-693-737, and that should take you to the webinar. You just have to enter your name and click on Knock to join. So I have somebody saying that they can't hear. I just did a sound check with others who are on the call, and they are able to hear me. So hopefully it's not an issue for everybody. And okay, I just got one more person saying you have no sound. So let me just check on that for a second, if you can hold. So for those of you who are having audio problems, may I suggest you try logging off the audio bridge and getting back onto the audio bridge, and there is an audio symbol, a phone symbol on the Join Me meeting, and that will get you either the option to dial in using a regular phone, or you can use the internet. There is no centralized option here for us to turn on audio for everybody. You have the option to join through the phone line or through use your computer to dial via the internet. Okay, so let's get started. The agenda I have for today is introductions and overviews. So I'm just going to take a minute to present who I am and who Astute Business Solutions is. And then we'll talk a little bit about selective adoption. So there's a lot of discussion about this. Obviously, there's been videos posted to YouTube, and at every conference, you have representatives from Oracle coming in and presenting what selective adoption is all about and how customers can benefit from it. But I wanted to just give you a take on how you should prepare for selective adoption and what are some of the considerations that you should take into mind when you design your own selective adoption strategy. So that's the reason why we have this topic here. From there, we'll go straight into Fluid. What is Fluid? How do you use it? Where will you benefit from Fluid, etc.? Talk about some use cases, and then we'll go straight into some demos using PeopleTools 8.55, version 9.2, and hopefully on the latest PUM image. That's the system we have available today. So let's do that. Introductions and overview. So quickly about Astute Business Solutions. So there are four main things that Astute Business Solutions does. We are well known as a PeopleSoft systems integrator. We've been in business for over 10 years, Oracle partner, founded by ex-PeopleSoft employees. And we pretty much provide end-to-end services within the PeopleSoft realm. But the ones that have been most important and most successful recently have been Health Check, which is a way for customers to analyze the impact of their upgrade and determine what sort of upgrade and how long and how complicated, whether they should decustomize, whether they should host, whether they should redo their architecture, whether they should implement new features, taking into consideration all of those things and giving the customer a roadmap that is tailored to their specific needs. That's what the health check is all about. As far as the upgrade goes, we provide end-to-end services, whether it's on-site, bespoke upgrades, or whether you want a lab upgrade, and so on. And then there's a list of other features and services that we deliver. Test automations have become a hot topic all of a sudden over the last year or so. Oracle has been describing in their product strategy videos and presentations that having an automated test strategy to deal with PUM images in 9.2 and to keep up with the selective adoption strategy that you define is very important. So having some sort of automated testing is important. Astute has a solution for that called Fast Test, which leverages PeopleSoft Test Framework, and I'll talk a little bit about that. PeopleSoft Cloud Architecture, which was introduced at Oracle Open World last year, is also a hot topic these days, and a lot of customers are looking at that to see whether they should consider moving their dev tests or training environments to the cloud, and whether that should be a private cloud, whether it should be the Oracle public cloud, Amazon EC2, a hosting partner, Rackspace, for example. Everybody's got a cloud option. So what does that mean to you, and how do you benefit from that? We have some automated solutions for that. We deploy cloud instances on Amazon EC2 for our customers, whether it is dev tests or demos, sandbox, training environments, whatever your needs are. And we have that fully automated using now in the latest release with Tools 855 and DPK. And then the last piece is strategy, where we help customers look at process optimization, roadmap and planning, and compliance-related services. So let's spend a minute talking about selective adoption. There's been a lot of discussion about this. I'm not going to regurgitate what Oracle is already telling you, but what I want to focus on is start out by talking about why selective adoption is important for everybody to consider. You may be working on your version 9.2 upgrade, or you may have already upgraded, and you may or may not have given enough thought to what your selective adoption strategy should be, what should be your pace of adoption, and your pace of innovation and change, etc. But regardless of what you want to do, every 8 weeks or so, approximately 8 weeks, Oracle publishes a schedule online, so that's what you would refer to. But every 8 weeks or so, there is a new PUM image for each application pillar in PeopleSoft. So one for HCM, one for financials, and so on. So what does that contain? It contains patches and fixes, new features, Fluid applications. A lot of new content that is being developed first on Fluid before anything else. Then there are updates, so tax updates, regulatory updates, tools updates. As a customer, you have the option to either take it all, so apply the entire image, or be selective, as in say, I only want to apply fixes for a particular piece of functionality that I use, or I want to apply tax updates, or I want to apply a tools patch. But regardless of what you decide, you have to be able to look at that holistically and say, what does this really mean to the way we operate and maintain our PeopleSoft applications? It starts out with a mindset change, because in 9.2, your maintenance footprint is going to look very different than what it was in prior releases. You're not dealing with bundles and maintenance packs and one-off patches and then tax updates and tools updates separately. Everything is packaged into one image. And you have to realize that in 9.2, it's going to come at you more frequently. You don't have to wait now for a major release to get new features. That's going to be there in almost every PUM. And then the change packages themselves can be defined not necessarily just by IT or the development team, but by business. They can start looking ahead and looking at the release notes, looking at the CFO tool to see what's coming down the pipeline or what has already been released, and picking and choosing from that and then communicating that to their IT counterparts, saying, here's a feature that we think is going to be impactful for the business in a positive way. Let's see when we can introduce this into our environment. And then you may have a certain cadence that you develop. So that's a scheduling. You may say that we're going to apply a PUM image once a year, 2 times a year, every quarter, and it may be the whole image or it may be a partial image depending on how much change you want to take on, how much bandwidth you have internally, how often you can test it, and what sort of testing tools you may use. A lot of those considerations go into creating your specific schedule. Now keep in mind, Oracle does not really say that you have to apply every PUM image, and that's why selective adoption. So you get to control that, and you can decide what is most appropriate for your organization. Once you have that strategy in place, it is highly recommended that you have some sort of test automation strategy, because regardless of whether you apply a small set of fixes or a whole PUM image or just some regulatory updates, you have to regression test that before you roll it out into production. And because PUM images are more frequent and you will be applying them more frequently than you did in prior releases, which is what we are seeing so far with most customers who have already been on 9.2, you will have to test more often, which means that you have to look at ways to cut down manual testing. And looking at something like PeopleSoft Test Framework is going to be very critical, because you already own that tool and it's something that's in your People Tools repository, and why not take advantage of that? So having said that, once you've determined what your selective adoption strategy is, you start focusing on Fluid. Why? Because Fluid is where a lot of the net new content is being developed by Oracle's product development team. We were in a partner summit last December here at Redwood Shores. The message from the PeopleSoft product leadership team, I don't speak for Oracle, but I'm just telling you what I heard, is very clear, is that they are all in with Fluid. This is a platform that has been liked by customers when they've seen previews of it. There are several customers who are already on 8.5.4 or 8.5.5 tools, and they're deploying not just delivered Fluid content, but are building their own. So a lot of positive feedback from that, a lot of learning. And Oracle believes that this is the way to improve and significantly enhance the user experience in PeopleSoft compared to how you were doing it in the classic UI. So heavy investments in Fluid. So Fluid, as most of you already know, but in case you did not, was first available in 8.5.4. And I'll talk a little bit about what Fluid is in a second. 8.5.5 tools came up with a lot of advanced features to Fluid compared to 8.5.4. But in today's presentation, we're just going to focus more on what 8.5.5 has to offer for Fluid as opposed to all the other features, because our focus today is on Fluid. So what is Fluid really? So Fluid is, let me put this into presentation mode here, if you can hold on for a second. There we go. So Fluid is PeopleSoft's version of a modern, intuitive user interface that is responsive in its design by using HTML5 and CSS3, which is an industry standard for creating responsive applications, whether it's a website or a portal or an app that you use that renders on your cell phone, etc. So what does it contain? Number one, it gives you a tablet or mobile device experience using the same code line that you would use to deploy an application online in your PeopleSoft instance that is accessed through a desktop or a laptop. Secondly, it's platform agnostic. So you now, if you want to create an application that both works on desktop and tablet or mobile, you're not creating two separate code lines. It works with the same code, and the system is smart enough to figure out what device is requesting the information, and it knows how to render the content on that device. The third thing is that the look and feel of this has dramatically changed. So for those of you who've seen Fluid before, you would agree with me that it does not look like a PeopleSoft application at all. In fact, I just showed a demo of Fluid to a customer that is on an older release. They're on 8.9, and they have not yet installed and looked at 9.2. And their first reaction was, wow, this looks like a SaaS application now. It looks dramatically different than what PeopleSoft used to be. So a fresh look not only means that the colors are better or it's slick, but it also means that it makes it more easier to use and more intuitive as well. Personalization is a big theme in Fluid, which means that whatever you could do in the classic UI has been further extended into the Fluid UI. So you could do all of those things where you could put shortcuts, add favorites, add some content to your screens based on some pre-built content or whatever the case may be. But beyond that, now you'll see in the demo today how you can add more content and create content on the fly and add that to your Fluid screens. And then the technology. So it is now standardized. It's HTML5, CSS3. So any web developer who has experience in working on this can come in and build style sheets and HTML pages so that you can brand it the way you want it to. Previously, most customers were doing this only in their portal environment. Now you can do this across applications. So that's a quick synopsis of what Fluid is. Now, what are the reasons why you should adopt Fluid? So the first reason is it is extremely intuitive. So think about things like self-service applications or dashboard-style reports that you were relying on BI solutions or other external products to deliver. Now all of those things are available within Fluid itself. Sorry about that. Just a little. Somebody was pinging us about not being able to log in, and I think there's a limitation that we hit on the total number of users that could be on the platform. So, which is a good sign and a bad sign. Anyway, so where was I? So talking about why you should adopt Fluid, it's intuitive. So the UI, as you will see in today's demo, is very rich and it's intuitive. The basic idea here is you should be able to push out information to the end user without them having to go in and navigate or inquire or run reports or queries to get that information. And how would you do that? You know what these roles are, what functions they are in your organization. You know how they use the PeopleSoft application. So why not make it more intuitive and present to them, at least at a basic level, what information they would look for every day, every time they log into PeopleSoft, make their experience more proactive. The second big reason is it's configurable, which means that you deploy a base application with several options and you give the users the ability to say, I want this on my screen, I don't want something else on my screen. Now you also still have the option to control that through security. So you maybe don't want to give all of your users all of the configuration options and you want to limit it only to your power users. So you can still do that. But now a lot more flexibility, a lot more empowerment to the end users. Actionable because now you can put things that you would normally look for only in a BI environment, like KPIs and metrics and a number of things pending approval, all of that stuff. You can put quick links in there. All of that you can put onto a Fluid page and users can immediately take action based on the information that's presented to them. And then it's inherited. What that means is that everything that you've developed over the years in PeopleSoft in classic UI does not necessarily go away. Those become the building blocks for what you deploy in Fluid. Now in today's demo, I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail to show you how you can build something that's already in App Designer or in People Tools in a classic UI and convert that into Fluid. That's the topic for another demo perhaps. But today I'm just going to show you how you can use Fluid and how you can play around with it, how you can configure it, and how you can build some reports and things like that on the fly. But I think it's important to understand that everything that you've done so far in App Designer for your classic UI is not necessarily going away. It's not going to waste. Those become inputs or building blocks for what you build in Fluid. So now who benefits from Fluid? So we talk about this in three categories. So you have your executives who may want to see certain metrics or some dashboard style reports that tell them, what is my liability, what is my cash flow, how many service requests am I tracking, what is my supplier rating for some certain suppliers that I'm tracking, depending on who the executive is. You can put all of those things into a Fluid screen so that that executive can now access that through a tablet or a smartphone. Now, obviously, there are other considerations behind the scenes on enabling smartphone access to your PeopleSoft application. How do you secure it? What are the other implications of that? But I'm not going into those details today. But for your power users, a lot of the things that they do around reporting, for example, which is one of the use cases we're going to present today, can be largely simplified and made a lot more efficient by using pivot grids and things like that in a Fluid screen. For your casual users or your self-service users, there's always been a demand that the experience of a self-service screen should be more mobile-like, should be more modern, like they're used to seeing in many of these online sites and self-service applications that you see on SaaS providers. So why not do that? Fluid gives you the opportunity to do that. The net though is that all of these things don't break the bank. They don't take a tremendous amount of effort. In our experience, when we have built projects like this for our customers, we've looked at turnaround times that are as short as 4 weeks for creating some of these fluid screens, and it's something that you can start benefiting from quite immediately. So how should you deploy Fluid? Obviously, you'll have a methodology. Whatever development methodology you follow, from getting requirement to reviewing it and finalizing it to creating a design and reviewing and signing off on that, and then putting it into your development cycle, all of that is still good. So your methodology still applies. But what you would have to do at a minimum is you have to be on 854 or 855 tools. And then we would recommend that you start off by taking a look at all of the pre-built Fluid content that Oracle is delivering and is planning to deliver in future images. So there is a website called PeopleSoft.pfe.com, Planned Features and Enhancements. If you have not already looked at that, it has a long list of features that are in the works without a committed timeline, but at least you know that Oracle's working on it. If those don't meet your needs, then you can create your own applications. And a good area where you might want to start is take existing templates that are there for the pre-built Fluid content, build your own home pages, build your own tiles, start off with some dashboard reports and that include some KPIs and actionable items, build some role-based home pages, push contextual information to the user based on their role, and slowly expand beyond that into other areas as your team settles in and they get more and more comfortable, and as you come around with a change management policy that helps you deploy this seamlessly and effectively into your production system. So let's talk a little bit about some use cases for Fluid. And these are not set in stone, by the way. This is just what we've seen from our experience and where we see Oracle spending a lot of its effort and time in developing new content. So dashboards. Now think about dashboards. This is a screenshot of a home page for project costing or project management in PeopleSoft 9.2. And I just put this here as an example. But imagine if you wanted to create a dashboard like this where you had some reports, some metrics, and some other things like that. So you could have graphs, you could have actionable data, you could have some metrics or measures. Now this sort of a design can be applied to any part of your business as long as that is being serviced by a PeopleSoft application or module in your back office today. So whether it's billing or AR or HR, payroll, whatever it is that you are trying to serve as a business need, you can design a dashboard for them depending on what their needs are, and you can put them up on Fluid and do that. Second use case is reporting. So you have a reporting console on PeopleSoft. I don't know how many customers are actually using it, where you could go into a centralized console, look at all of your reports and manage them there. But think of all of the reports that your users run today, a combination of batch reports, online queries. Oftentimes what we find is that the users run many queries in a PeopleSoft production environment very often, very frequently. And then they download these queried results into Excel and massage the data so they can analyze it, they can identify the information that they're looking for. And the main reason why that is being done today is because trying to do all that online in a query makes the query extremely complex, which may in turn have some performance impact. And it's easier to just write a query that dumps everything into Excel. And obviously the Excel wizards can go in and run macros, they can sort, they can filter, they can run pivots, what if analysis, etc. For those of you who do VLOOKUPs and all of those nice things in Excel, that's what you do today. But that is actually a drag on your productivity, and it actually takes a lot of time for you to produce the kind of report that you really need to get to. Those are ideal candidates for you to convert into pivot grids, and you'll see an example of how you can do that. Put that onto a Fluid homepage, into a tile, and do all of that slicing and dicing and filtering of information online without having to download it in Excel. The beauty of it is that now that it is online, you can share that with others in the organization. Instead of emailing files and people running their own formulas on every Excel, you can have a common platform for collaboration. The third area is that, so this is just telling you what the process is of how you would go from query to fluid. The third area is creating role-based homepages. Again, I'm showing you an example of a delivered homepage, but there are a few available in HCM, a few available in FSCM today, but you may want to create one just for your AP operational folks, or just for your accounting team, or just for your billing resources, depending on what your needs are. Similarly in HR, you may want a home page just that aggregates some content, some links, and some reports for your benefits users, for example. You can create as many of those as you would like. They can control them through security, and those can be the default landing pages for people who have those profiles and those roles assigned to them in PeopleSoft. So again, making the application more intuitive and more effective. They log in, they see their home page, which is tailored to their job function, as opposed to them always going to the main menu and searching for their module, and then going to a search page. Very different concept here with Fluid. So this just points out what some of the features are in Fluid, and I'll cover that when we get to the demo here and very quickly. The other thing that you could do, the use case that we're going to show you today, is transactional analytics. So now with Fluid, you have the ability to build some analytics on the fly in your PeopleSoft system. Now, you have to take this with a grain of salt, because we are not talking about BI-style analytics where you build facts and dimensions and cubes and you do a trend analysis and things like that. But when you're looking at a screen of transactional data, if you wanted to run some sort of a report or some sort of a quick comparison to say what happened between these three and what thresholds did they surpass or not, those kinds of things, you don't have to now rely on a BI report. You can do that on the fly in PeopleSoft, and you'll see an example of how to do that. So let me pause here and get to demo. That way, you can see some of these screens in action. So the system that I'm going to log into is PeopleSoft Financials 9.2. And here, let me close off my bookmarks bar so that you can see more of the screen. And this is on PUM image 16. We have an environment with 17 as well, but I have certain things set up here on the 16 PI image, PUM image 16 environment for FSCM. So I'm going to show that to you first. So as you may notice, in case you did not, let me just log out here and log back in. So sign out and sign in. And what you will see is, as soon as I log in, for those of you who have not seen 854 or 855 Fluid, in 855, which is what this version is, by default, the application presents a Fluid home page to me when I log in. The classic menu is still there, it's hidden, and it's below a couple of levels, but you can get to it if you wanted to. But by default, the screen that's presented to you is a Fluid homepage screen, and in this case, it defaults to my employee self-service page. And each home page, there can be multiple home pages. So if I click on the drop-down next to employee self-service, you'll see there are multiple home pages. Most of these are delivered, except the one that you see here that I've highlighted. That's a custom home page that we've built, and we'll show you how to build those as well. So there are many delivered home pages, and you can create more if you'd like to. There's a home button that always gets you to the home page, which is your employee self-service page in this case. There's a notifications icon that gives you actions and alerts. So actions are things like approvals, which means you have to go in and perform a certain action within the PeopleSoft system. So whatever's in your queue, driven by work lists and so on, all of them appear here in the actions section within notifications. And then alerts, as in how they are configured, you can use the alerts to give you information that the system wants you to know without you always having to run an inquiry or a query or a batch report. These are all configurable, and they are basically triggers based on certain transactions doing certain things in your application. That's the simplistic view of that. It uses the event notification framework in PeopleSoft, and it's very powerful. The more you use it, the more you'll get accustomed to it. Think of how you use your smartphone today. You're so used to seeing that top bar of your smartphone continuously being populated with how many new messages you have, how many Facebook updates, how many chat messages, how many new emails. Your calendar reminder pops up there, and you're always swiping down to look at those alerts, and you're doing something about it. You're taking an action, or you're dismissing it depending on how important it may be. Similar concept now in PeopleSoft, where you can set up as many alerts as you would like related to your job function, to your business. And as and when those alerts pop up, you get information. So now you're not always walking over to your colleague's chair and saying, hey, can you tell me what's going on with this? You just set up an alert, and you would know that before you go into a meeting, you may have a lot of information at your disposal through these alerts, for example, so that you can take appropriate actions. And the third icon here is the personalization icon. So you can personalize your screen, you can publish more home pages, you can modify your preferences, or you can log out. And the last one here that looks like the compass here, that's the nav bar. And this is new in 854 and 855. In 855, this is even more powerful. It gives you, so the navigator is what you would use to replace the main menu, but you can still navigate to every module or every feature that's available in PeopleSoft. And the ones that are Fluid enabled will show you Fluid pages. The ones that are not will show you the classic UI pages. So for example, if I wanted to go to customer information and look at general information, I click on that. What you would notice is now this screen looks like a classic screen, and which it is. It's just encased on the top within the Fluid template. So you still have the home button, notifications, and the nav bar there. And you can always, with a single click, go back home and work from there. What you see on the screen here, approvals, expenses, requisitions, time entry, service requests, these are all what you would call tiles in Fluid. So what this means is now you can say, okay, I want to look at my approvals. I can work on that. I want to work on requisitions. So I've created a tile for that. I want to look at some status reports, or maybe I'm logging service requests. So I want to know what's happening with my service requests at any point in time. I have some travel-related information. Again, this is employee self-service, so it can aggregate transaction content or links to transactions or reports or metrics from across the application, depending on what my role is and what I have the privilege of viewing or not viewing in the application. So that's how you would use that. Each of these things is a tile. So a tile is basically a way for you to display content or provide a link into a transaction. So let's look at expenses. While I look at the tile now I've just logged in. So let me just do this one more time so that everybody is clear on that. One click, I log in, and I'm into my PeopleSoft application. Now, without clicking on anything, I know that there is something that's pending in my expenses where I have to go in and do something. So I have some unapplied charges. That's what the system's telling me. And I have to do something about it. So I could click on that, and I can go in and look at what those unapplied charges are. And I can either create a transaction or an expense transaction for that and submit it, or I may say, no, this is not something that I need to expense. Or you may say, I have to look at, if my approvals were set up here, you would say, how many approvals are there in my queue for me to review and act upon? Or if I've created service requests, how many open requests? Now, why is this important to understand? Without clicking on anything, the system is telling me what the screen can do or what the application has done and where you should go. So look, when you come to a screen like this, it gives you the ability to focus your activities in the application based on where the highest priorities are, and you can go from there. Similarly, if you go to another screen, so let's say we go to Procurement Operations, and you will see similar concept. There are many tiles. The first one that you see here, let me just bring up my annotate tool. So this one, Procurement Spend Analysis, this is just a reporting tile. So it's giving you a link with an icon that looks like a report with some pie chart icons there. And you click on that, it'll take you to a report. Whereas there are other tiles which say there are certain documents that require approval. There are certain that are over the threshold. So maybe that's a metric that you're tracking. You're tracking some suppliers here in your watch list. Again, without running a query, without going to a search page, without entering any information, the system is telling you what's going on, and then you have the ability to drill down into one or more of these screens and do whatever you need to do. So let's go back to the home page here. I click on expenses, and it gives me a home page again for expenses. So it gives me access to my wallet transactions. It gives me information on how many reports I've submitted, how many are unpaid. It also gives me a quick access to add an expense report. Now, This would work exactly the same whether I did this on a tablet or my desktop. So for today's demo, I'm doing this on a desktop, but my desktop tablet is also a tablet. I'm using a Microsoft Surface. So if I just switch from mouse and keyboard to my touchscreen and start entering information, it will work exactly the same regardless of the device form factor or the type of device. And that's what we mean by responsive and the fact that it is platform agnostic. So again, one click from the home page gets you into expenses. A second click gets you into the direct transaction. You either enter an expense or you create an expense report, whatever your needs may be. Now let's look at how we can personalize our screen here. So you can click on personalize and it gives you the ability to either add a tile. Let's say I don't want to see physical inventory in my home page. So I'm going to X out of that and I save it. When I go back to the home page, it refreshes and that tile is gone. So that's no longer there. If I wanted to go back and add a tile, so let's say I've created a tile. So I want to add a tile to my home page, and there are several tiles that I've created for demo purposes. So let me just say I want to create this, and I add that. And one thing you will notice here is this tile is broader than many of the other tiles you see above it. And I'll show you why that is when we create a new tile. In this case, I'm taking an existing tile and I'm adding that to my home page. So that's where the personalization comes in. As a IT team or a business enablement team, you can create a lot of these tiles and publish them into the repository, but users can now have the flexibility to go in and add the ones that they want or remove the ones that they don't want from their home page. And this particular tile happens to be a pivot grid based tile, so you click on that, it's going to go in and show you some information right there, or you can click into the report itself and it'll open up the tile into another fluid page that gives you a detailed pivot grid. You have the ability to apply lots of filters depending on how you set up your query. This is not complicated. This is not rocket science by any means. Most of you have queries like this in your organization already. It just takes a little bit of know-how to convert this and publish them into Fluid and make it a lot more effective. So as I was saying, one of the use cases we were talking about was how would you apply this in Fluid? How would you take advantage of Fluid? So let's assume that you have a complex query and this sort of information is usually downloaded into Excel and massaged in Excel, and you create your own formulas and stuff like that. Now, without doing that, you can come in and you can just say, I already have the raw data in here. The entire query is being brought online, but I want to make sure that I only want to see information for a particular department. So you do that, and it should automatically filter. I hit on expand all, which means that it's going to expand the full grid and show me every line level detail. So that's why you see that spinning. So this is a big query. It's using ledger balances. It's a delivered query in PeopleSoft. So, but while that is doing that, one of the things that you could pay attention to here is that you can come in and apply one or more filters and immediately see on the right-hand side that the data is getting refreshed or populated based on that. So let's say I only wanted to look at operating expenses, a particular account. And once you select that account, your ledger balances are going to get updated and you will only see transactions related to that account. And then you still have the option of scrolling down, looking at the raw data, or looking at the graph and then taking some action based on that. As you would notice, all of these things that are in blue in the transaction grid, these are all drill down capable. So as I hover my mouse over that, you will see that it's giving you information on that's a level 3 account node, expense account, and so on and so forth, and what that amount is. Now, once you click on that, it will give you the level of detail that you want that summarizes that. So gives you what is that balance made up of, and you can go into that and work on it, or you can get to the level of detail that you want. So very powerful tool, and you can work on this with not just the delivered reports, but you can create your own reports, and we've done this for several customers on several applications already. So big game changer. Imagine having many variations of one base query today in your application because you have so many filters that you have to apply, and somebody wants this, somebody wants that plus this, or any other combination thereof. all of those end up being different queries. And large numbers of private and public queries, when we look at upgrade projects, they become a nightmare really, and they derail your upgrade. Now, instead of that, you can get rid of many of those queries, have one query that kind of is representative of multiple needs, realizing that the slicing and dicing, the grouping, the summarization, adding averages or counts, all of that can be done in the pivot grid itself without you having to run a query each time. So that's one way of doing that. Now, the other thing that you should probably look at here is if I wanted to come in and personalize this, but not just add a tile, but I wanted to add my own home page, which means, yeah, PeopleSoft has given me some home pages, but I wanted to create my own home page. And so all I do is I can create a home page, and then I can add as many tiles as I would like. So I can go and look at tiles by grouping. So these are called folders that PeopleSoft provides, and all the pre-built tiles are organized in some hierarchy like this. So you can do that, or you can say, I've created some of my own tiles. So maybe I want to create defect status here, and then I want to add the defect status is a custom tile that we've built, but maybe I want to add a self-service tile. So I want to add expenses because I think that's something that I'll be looking at daily because I'm on the road quite often. And I want to look at something by asset, so I want an easy way to find an asset. Whatever your need is, you can come in and look at all of the information that is available in pre-built tiles or custom tiles that you may have built, quickly add that to your home page and save it. And that way it's available and it's published, and then you go to that information. In this case, a tile that I picked probably had some issue with the transaction. It was delivered or not. But you get the idea that you can come in and you can personalize it, and you can select or create home pages. You don't want the home page, you can get rid of it. Now, this is all still at the user personalization level. Me adding a home page or deleting it does not impact the rest of the system, and everything is controlled, again, through security. So now let's say I wanted to add a new tile. So I have some content that I have built, but that's not available in a tile yet. So maybe I'll go in and find a way to create a tile for that. So I would just navigate to the tile wizard. Let me find that here. And this is new in 8.55. So what you can do is you can create a new tile, and this is over the top. What you would see is, let me just point this out so that everybody understands this. So this is what you would call a guided horizontal navigation process. And this is something that was not available in 8.54 for Fluid, but it's now available. And you can do a vertical navigation or a horizontal guided navigation. Both options are available. It just makes the overall transaction and process simpler, easy to understand, minimizes training because it's almost self-explanatory. You have to go from step 1 to step 5. You can go back and forth between steps and so on. So important concept in Fluid application development. So you give it a name, and then you select what sort of data type you want your tile to contain. So right now, the options are, it can be an application class. So you can use an application class to provide a set of links to deliver a KPI or many different types of values there that you can use. It can be a free text, which means it's just a tile that has free text, which means you can put in the name of the link that you want or name the tile whatever you wanted, and then you would link that to a content reference in PeopleSoft. It can be a navigation collection, so you can use delivered nav collections, or you can create your own. So let's say you have somebody who's a power user in Procure to Pay, and that person has to have access to ePro purchasing and AP screens. You can create a custom nav collection, and you can make those links available to that person either as a navigation bar or as just a collection of links on a single page so that they don't have to jump through menus each time they have to go from one to the other. Or you can do a pivot grid. Now, this is what we're going to talk about. This brings us to our second use case, which is on reporting. And what you can do here is you can select, I'm just going to select an existing pivot grid here so that you can see what it does. So maybe we can say defect status report. And this is, again, something that we have created as a custom pivot grid. You can do the same thing with a delivered pivot grid. I'm just going to accept all the defaults here. The tile height and width is what determines the size of the tile on the home page. So if I make this a 1 by 2, that becomes a rectangular tile. So it's 1 wide, 1 tall by 2 wide, so on. You can make it a 2 by 2, which makes it a bigger square tile. And that really depends on what sort of information you want to put in that tile. So if it's a reporting tile, then you want to display a live graph within the tile before the user even clicks on the tile, then you may want to size that appropriately. If it is just a NAV collection or a link or a single transaction, then a 1 by 1 should be sufficient. But let's just do this as a 1 by 2 and move on to the next one. And I just quickly review and submit, and I publish it, so that's done. And now I can go back to my home page, and the tile that I've just added, I'm going to personalize my home page and add that tile to my, so this is the one I just created, and that shows up here at the bottom. So maybe I don't want to see this one that I added before, and now I see this. Now, because this is a 1 by 2, you'll notice that it cannot fit in this space, right? So you may have wanted to put a square tile in here. This won't fit there, so it automatically knows that it has to push that down to the next line, and it'll take care of that for you. So I save this, and I go back to my home page. It automatically refreshes, and the tile is available. So this tile is a pivot grid. So there's a graph that we had set up for the pivot grid, and that's why it took about a second or two for the graph to populate in the tile. And now when I click on it, I get my pivot grid, and I have the ability to slice and dice this information. I can always expand all of this and download this whole thing to Excel, so I can export this data. I can change my chart options. I can update my filters. All of that information is still, all of those links are still available to you. So that's how you would quickly create a tile that takes a query and converts that into a pivot grid, and you display that on a Fluid homepage. Now, if you wanted to create something like a dashboard, you would take these two things that I've shown you so far as building blocks, and you would first create a home page, and then within the home page, you would determine what sort of tiles you want to create, whether the tile contains a metric or a graph or a report or some actionable items like approvals or things like that, and then that would be your dashboard. Obviously, you have to go through some design process to get to that, but there can be a standardization saying, here's what our dashboard looks like. So for example, in your organization, you will say, regardless of which type of user it is for or which module it is for, we think a dashboard should be comprised of these basic components. And that can be your underlying guideline and design principle for Fluid dashboards. And then the content is you creating tiles. Before you're creating a tile, you look at a transaction or a query or a report, convert that into a pivot grid or some other pagelet that then can be brought into a tile. Keep in mind, a tile exposes information that's available in a published format onto a Fluid homepage. A tile by itself does not give you the ability to create a net new transaction that does not exist today. So before you create a tile, there's some precursor steps that you'll have to follow to either convert something that's in Classic into Fluid-enabled features. So you'll publish that as a pagelet, a grouplet, etc., and there's a bunch of steps that you would go through. And then you would come in and put that onto a tile and deliver it here. Okay, so moving on, I just wanted to show you a couple of other things on Fluid before we pause to take some questions. Here's an example of a custom homepage along with a combination of some reporting tiles and some transactional tiles that we have created. So this is for our test automation product called FastTest. The reason I'm showing this to you is it's a pre-built example. So a tile or a home page can consist of whatever tiles you really want on your home pages. It does not have to be transaction only or report only or metric only. You decide that based on what your need is, as opposed to a dashboard where we think it's better or we recommend that it's better that you standardize on a design template. A home page now can serve multiple purposes. It can be a collection of links, it can be role or function based, and it can be driven by security. So you can do a lot of different things with a home page, and you can create custom home pages like this. So this first one, for example, is a transaction that allows you to view your test library and operate on it. So I'm just going to select this and just show you what that functionality looks like. And it's going to pick up a test, and it's going to show me what that test looks like. This is exposing a PeopleSoft test framework-based test. Now, if I wanted to go back and within this look at something that was a report, or look at another feature that was showing me some results from tests that recently have been executed, I can look at all of those things here. So there's a combination of some transactions, some outcomes, and then some reports. And I can click on these, and it'll take me to the detailed report, and I can see more information there. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with your home pages. Now let's look at an option where one of the use cases, I think the last use case that I'd mentioned was how you could create analytics on the fly using PeopleSoft. So in 855, this simplified analytics has been introduced, and it gives you the ability to take information that's available in a transaction grid, and this may take a couple of minutes or about a half a minute or so to pop up. You can take that information, and without downloading it, you can actually create a report on the fly. Those can be a combination of grids or graphs and charts and so on. And you can just manage that. And you can save that as your own report online, or you can publish that into a common report repository for others to see. So what's important here is, so this is a transaction page. Now it's showing me a supplier watch list, and I've configured the supplier watch list by adding these 5 suppliers that you see here. And I have the ability to add more suppliers. So I can click on add a supplier, and I can add that, or I can edit the existing suppliers, and I can remove an existing supplier if I don't want them on my watch list anymore. But now that we have this watch list created, every time I click on a supplier, it's going to, on the watch list space side of the screen, it's going to update that information, and it's going to show me what's going on. So in this case, I'm looking at PO approval cycle time that is over 2 days. And why is it taking more than 2 days to approve a PO? So maybe I want to track that. I'm interested in knowing that. That information is available in detail when I click on the exclamation mark next to that particular line. But let's say I have all of this information, and I want to create some sort of an online report that helps me analyze this information. On the right-hand side here, you should see a supplementary panel. This is called a supplementary panel. What you see here, that's a supplementary panel. And that is new in Fluid and in 855. So you click on that, and what it does is it gives you the ability to create your own report. So I've created some here, and if I click on one of these that I've created, what it's going to do is it's instantly going to create a report based on the information that was already there in that previous transaction. So what do I mean by that? The information that's there on this screen can be used to create an analytics. So let's just create a new one. And it tells you what sort of analytics do you want to create, and you have the option within that page saying, I want to look at non-contract PO spend, and my PO spend is what I'm going to call it. And it says, do you want to create it as a chart? I say yes. Do you want to use a simple table, et cetera, et cetera? Do you want to use a pivot grid? I can do that if I wanted to slice and dice that information. And then it gives me a number of fields from the underlying transaction that I can select to add those values into my report. Right? So I do that, and I'm just going to accept whatever is selected by default, and I save it. It's instantly available now as an analytic for me on, okay, and I can add it to my home page. I have some publish options. I can say publish this to all the users or publish this to a repository. Either way, you have the ability to share this. So that's what's important. So now that I've done that, I can exit this, and what you'll see is I have a report here that's always available for me because I created this. I didn't run a query. I didn't go into SQL. I didn't edit anything. But just by clicking on that now, instantly I have a pivot grid that I can use to analyze the information that was there in the supplier watch list. And this can be applied to any transaction or any set of features that you want in PeopleSoft that you can think of, where you deliver a certain amount of information on a single page, but you want to look at different versions of that or different interpretations of that base data, and you can create this sort of stuff on the fly without having to go to the developer or without having to log a service request or building a customization. This is all just personalization of that transaction data. Very powerful feature once you get to know how to use it. And again, still your PeopleSoft applications team still retains control of the application. It's not like a runaway freight train where anybody can go do whatever they want. These reports are just representations of the same data that's there on the transaction screen, but specifically based on what that particular user wanted to see. And it gives them the ability to create that without having to enhance the application or build customized reports or queries. So very powerful feature that you should consider using in Fluid. Okay, so we are nearing the top of the hour, so we have about 30 minutes left, and I wanted to give sufficient time for Q&A and any follow-up questions that you may have. So let me switch back to PowerPoint here very quickly and show you one or two more things before we go into into Q&A, sorry. So what I wanted to summarize on with reporting and analytics, because I think there's a huge opportunity there for customers to take advantage of Fluid, especially with reporting and analytics, is you can genuinely provide self-service reporting and analytic capabilities to your end users without them having to rely on IT to do a lot of that work for them. And so you think about all the cycle times that you go through to understand somebody's request and then build a report, then you test it, you migrate it, you put it into production, and then you update that every time you have a patch or a fix or an upgrade. It's just a whole process around that. Instead, if there is a transaction that has certain components or objects that it is using underlying that transaction, you're just exposing that now to the user through an online screen, and they're picking and choosing fields that they want to see, and PeopleSoft takes care of running that as a report and producing that information for them online. So very powerful in terms of the self-service capability. And then it's all contextual. So you're doing these things in the context of a transaction. So you're seeing the transaction, and then you're saying, okay, within this, show me this particular view and things like that. It's on demand because now you don't have to wait for somebody else to build stuff for you. The transaction and the options are available. You can personalize and configure. It's integrated into the UI, so it's not a separate development platform, so you don't have to go to App Designer and create something or a SQL tool to create something. You just do that right there within the PeopleSoft application in Fluid. And then obviously it's very intuitive. I don't see a huge learning challenge here with these features that we have demonstrated today. You just have to spend a little bit of time and get comfortable with the new UI, which I think is significantly easier to use compared to the classic UI. So training-wise, if you brought somebody in brand new into PeopleSoft in your organization and you want to train them on their particular job functions and modules that they'd be working on, I think Fluid makes your training much simpler and easier to administer than the complex screen that you would see in a classic UI. So with that, let's move on to Q&A. And so here's, again, a quick reference point on how you would post questions. So use the chat icon on Join Me so that you can post questions and address your questions to either me, Arvind Rajan, I'm the presenter, or to the entire group, whatever you would prefer. If you'd like the group to see your question, then please post it to the entire group. And if you'd like me to see the question and respond, I'll read the question out, and then I'll provide the answer. So, and for reference, if you have some additional information beyond today's webinar and you would like to get answers or see additional demos or understand more about what your Fluid deployment options are, how you could test Fluid, then feel free to contact us at the phone number and the email address that's provided here. So question here from Dave, how much content do you feel you use delivered versus configured? So great question. For the most part, when we first started rolling out Fluid for our customers, we just turned on all of the delivered Fluid content because initially there's a bit of a adjustment period, as I would call it, A lot of customers that we talk to still are hesitant to deploy Fluid. I talk to customers at conferences often. They're saying they're going to upgrade to 854 or 855, but they're going to turn off Fluid. It does not make a lot of sense to me, but obviously customers have their own reasons. I think it's important to understand that turning Fluid on does not necessarily mean that you're delivering a mobile solution for your PeopleSoft application. They are still different. Now, Fluid does enable mobile, but it does not mean that Fluid equals to mobile, because your mobile strategy has to take into account security, how people access, whether you have a BYOD policy. A lot of different things come into play. Now, having said that, I think the initial deployment is always to turn on delivered Fluid. So you get a flavor for what Fluid looks like, you show your users that, and then the gears start turning in their minds and they start coming back to you with ideas saying, hey, can my report be on here? Can this transaction be here? What would that look like? So then you would look at your needs by priority and then determine how much of that you want to create, how much of that you can address through configuration, as in modify a delivered homepage and add a couple of other tiles to it. So you go through a process there. As far as possible, we try to provide configurable options. But if you have a bolt-on or a heavily customized piece of PeopleSoft and you want to provide that in Fluid, then you're looking at delivering some net new content for Fluid. And it's a one-time thing, and you will leverage all of the existing content that you have in App Designer to convert that into Fluid. And I'll put convert in quotes because there is no conversion tool per se. Many of you may already know that, but in case you did not, you have to go through a development process to Fluidize or Fluid enable those screens. Next question is, for HCM, it appears there are very limited delivered content, and that's true up until image 16 for HCM, and I have that available. If you want, I could log in and show you what those screens are. There was not a lot of net new Fluid content being provided, but I think my understanding from talking to Oracle, but this is something that you would go back to your Oracle product strategy resource or your Oracle support resource to find out when and where they plan to deliver more things. The PeopleSoftPFE.com website will also give you an indication of that. But what we've heard is there's a lot more content to come for HCM and for other applications as well. Question from the audience here. Are you able to turn off Fluid navigation in PT855? And if so, how do you do that? So PeopleTools 8.55 by default puts you into Fluid mode. Yes, you can actually revert back to Classic, but it requires a little bit of hacking, quote unquote, into the system, and not something that we would recommend. I would take that question offline if you want to get specific details on how to do that. I won't have the ability to show that to you in the demo here today. Next question is, can I have a recording of this training or your PowerPoint file? We will have a PowerPoint published to the website, and we'll share that with you. For all the people who have registered, you'll get an email containing that information, and you can view that online or download that PDF. Question from Tanisha, is it possible to use Interaction Hub and Fluid home pages in a cohesive manner? Absolutely. So Fluid is really dependent on your tools release. So you can take your Interaction Hub instance and upgrade that to 854. We would recommend 855 because Fluid is a lot more capable in 855, and especially for the kinds of things that you may want to do in an Interaction Hub, we think 855 would be the platform to go to. Once you do that, you can deploy your home pages and nav collections and access to transactions, reports, things that you've now built on or provided links to in your portal. You can provide that in Fluid. So that's certainly doable, and they can coexist and work very well together. Okay, so again, if you have any additional questions, you can post them to the chat online and join me. If you think of some things after the webinar today, you can always call us at the number provided, or you can email us at info@bstudent.com. In regards to turning Fluid off in 855, is that true for desktop and mobile mode? So, my understanding of this, and I can check with my tech team if I'm mistaken or if I don't have the complete answer, when you turn Fluid off, it really does not work for desktop versus mobile separately. You just do that, and then the content works the same regardless of desktop or mobile. So if the question is about can I have Fluid only for mobile or something like that, then I'd have to get some more details to understand what you're exactly looking at. You're saying that you won't mind mobile, but desktop mode would be frustrating. So if you're referring to Fluid in desktop mode being frustrating, then I need to understand why and where and what you've tried to do that causes that frustration, because we've delivered this to several customers already. And in addition to what we've done, we've spoken to customers at conferences where they have deployed this on their own. And so far, we've seen a lot of good feedback. Next question from Arlene. We just upgraded to 855 tools in FSCM, and the screen is blank. How do you turn on Fluid? So as part of your upgrade, there should be some post-configuration steps that your tech lead or your PS admin would have to do to configure delivered Fluid. It's not a lot, but looks like they might have missed a few steps there. But you should not be seeing blank screens. You should be seeing delivered Fluid home pages with delivered tiles in them. So if that's something that you're not able to resolve, please feel free to ping me, and I'll have somebody in my tech team work with you and give you some inputs on that. In 8.54, was this configurable? So yes, in 8.54, you still had many of the configuration options you saw today in 8.55. So for example, you could still personalize your home page. You could create a new home page. What you could not do was you could not use a tile wizard. You could not do a lot of things with simplified analytics. You did not have the master detail construct for Fluid. You did not have activity guides that worked well in Fluid. So a lot has changed, a lot has improved in 8.55, and as a result, more configurable options have come in. Next question. How do you add tiles of HCM to the Interaction Hub homepage? So Interaction Hub is usually set up where you're configuring it to talk to multiple PeopleSoft applications. You're configuring it to talk to HCM and financials, or depending on what your PeopleSoft footprint is. Just like you have access from Interaction Hub, so the portal repository in your hub is aggregating content from these other applications. Those tiles that you have in your 9.2.8.54 or 8.55 HCM instance can be exposed in your Interaction Hub environment, and then you would create those home pages or pull those tiles into custom home pages into your Interaction Hub. Question from Hari, how does Fluid affect performance of the system? Internally, many pivot grids based on queries run behind the scenes. It's true. You have to be careful about how many pivot grids you put onto a single screen. Obviously, if you put a lot of them and they are running complex queries, then there will be some time taken to load the screen. The idea here is that you pick and choose the information that you want, and also keep in mind that when you put a single pivot grid on a page, that may be the equivalent of multiple queries. So you're not running that many queries behind the scenes, you're running one query, and you can spend the time instead in optimizing and tuning that query. So you should be able to optimize that screen and test it out before you roll it. And Dave had a suggestion here on blank screens. Try the portal security thing. Thank you for that, Dave. Question from Dave again in 8.54. This was configurable via web profile setting. It sounds odd that they removed this in 8.55. I agree. I can only say that I don't know why they removed it, but if something that we can always send back as feedback to the product development team and see what they do with it. Any questions on deployment or what your thoughts are, or even if you're already using Fluid? For those of you who want to share your experience with others in the audience, feel free to do that. Next question from CERN. In our university, we are on 8.53 People Tools. Would you recommend us to upgrade to 8.54 or directly to 8.55? We are not sure how stable 8.55 is at this point. So we've done a couple of People Tools upgrades as part of version 9.2 upgrades or implementations, and we've moved those customers to 8.5.5. I've heard from customers at other sites at conferences where they have already upgraded to 8.5.5 or they're in the process of upgrading, and I have not seen major issues pointing to the stability of the release. We have done internal upgrades on our own sandbox environments, and we have not discovered any major hurdles here with 8.5.5 that would point to potential issues and that may prevent you from rolling this out to production. So as a general recommendation, we would always suggest that you go to the latest People Tools release, because not only do you get Fluid, but you get a whole host of other features, as I had in my first slide. And I can just go back here and quickly put that slide up for you. So People Tools in 8.5.5 has a lot more than just Fluid. It has, additional lifecycle management tools. You get an updated PeopleSoft test framework. You get the cloud architecture and DPK, so you can automate your instance deployment and configuration. You have application data set functionality has been increased or enhanced. So there are a lot of other things that you would get by upgrading to 8.5.5, not just Fluid. So we would always recommend that you look at 8.5.5 as a slightly bigger picture and upgrade to that to take advantage of not just Fluid, but also all of these other things that will just overall make your application better and also make your maintenance and ongoing support of the application easier. So now there may be specifics within your organization that I'm not aware of that may prevent or that may say 8.5.5 is not an option. So for example, in prior tools releases, there was always a consideration. I mean, we can look at specifics for 8.5.5, but let's say your enterprise-wide browser was not at a release that was compatible with the latest People Tools release. And that meant that if you had to go to that People Tools version, then everybody's IE or whatever other browser you're using has to be updated. And there may be a dependency in there. So those things may also come into the picture. But you have to look at all of those things and then determine. But if it's just tools that you're looking at, our recommendation would be to go to 8.5.5. We know a couple of customers who are already live that we've worked with personally, and then several others that we've spoken to who have gone live on 8.5.5, and we have not heard of any major issues that prevented them from doing so. You're welcome. Any other questions? Feel free to post them. Thank you for your interaction and for sharing your thoughts and questions with us. Appreciate that. I'll do my best to capture all of these and put them into an FAQ so that we can post them along with a link to the audience, those who have registered for today's session. Is there any notification? So this is from Ahan. Is there any notification, reminder, or alert mode feature for functional transactions? So maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit more, Ahan, so that I can understand your question. But in general, you can apply a notification to any transaction in PeopleSoft. It's not just limited to technology or code. You can say that you have the ability to say, so let's say there's something that you're looking for in terms of how many POs were approved that were for a certain type of PO and a certain PO amount or a certain set of suppliers, and you want to get alerts on that. You can set up notifications for things like that in PeopleSoft, and those are really functional, what I would call functional transactions. So it's very capable. You'll have to just explore the notification framework a little bit to see how it works. There's not a lot of these alerts that are pre-built, or the ones that are pre-built may not just apply to what you want to do. But the fact is that these are not customizations or enhancements. You're just creating notifications, and think of it broadly. I mean, not exactly, but loosely as creating messages that you want the system to send you when a certain event happens in the system. So it's always looking out for that event and sending that information out to you. Question, are you going to be sharing the video recording of this as well? Yeah, we'll have to edit the video recording because we're showing some Oracle content here, and there's some questions related to what's in 8.5.4 and 8.5.5. So as a partner, we have to be a bit careful about what we say, and things like that. So yes, at some point we'll have a video recording of this also available for all of you to view, and it'll be posted on our website. Any other questions? Thank you again for all of your questions and your interaction. Really appreciate that. For those of you who are on the call today, thank you for taking time to attend this. We'll be sending out a brief survey just to understand where you are at with People Tools and Fluid and what your thoughts are and why you may or may not be deploying Fluid. It's good feedback to have for future webinars and for future Q&A sessions like this. So if you can take a few minutes of your time and contribute to that survey, I'd appreciate that very much. We have some information on Fluid training and Fluid deployment services on our website, so feel free to take a look at that. Go to beastute.com and you'll find that information there right off the homepage, and we'll be happy to say that. Question, anything you want to say on cloud? So this particular webinar was not meant to focus on cloud, but yeah, PeopleSoft cloud architecture I think is exciting. It's new. The instance that you saw a live demo of PeopleSoft today on was actually deployed using Tools 855 and DPK. And for our admin, excluding prep time, and by that what I mean is downloading the DPKs and modifying the delivered automation scripts so that they can run in our Amazon EC2 environment. Excluding that, the actual time it took to install this version of PeopleSoft and bring up the instance and run the post-install configuration was under 2 hours. And that's phenomenal when you think of how much time it takes otherwise for customers, whether you're in-house team, whether you're hosted, to create a new instance and to apply your security or your configurations and change your integration nodes, process scheduler definitions. It takes hours and hours of work, and some customers tell us they have to go to their IT department like 4 weeks in advance to get an instance in time for their project. Minimum turnaround time that I've seen is like a week, and now you're looking at automating that using cloud architecture to deploy an instance in 2 hours or under 2 hours. And then further automating that by saying, I want to load projects once my instance is available. I want to run shell scripts to do this and that. There is quite a bit of possibility there with cloud architecture on PeopleSoft. Is turning off Fluid considered a customization? That's a good one. I'm not quite sure about that. I don't know if that's considered a customization. I'm sure that'll have an impact when you go and apply a tools patch or a tools upgrade. Maybe not the tools patch, but certainly with the tools upgrade, it's going to, upset that setting of yours. But I think it's important to also understand the direction in which Oracle's going with Fluid. So I don't think they're going to change something. And again, this is my opinion only, not what Oracle has communicated officially or otherwise. I don't think Oracle's going to go away from Fluid. I think there's a very large positive response from the user community saying that they want it. And so Oracle's investing a lot of time. So it's a matter of time before everybody understands how it can improve their application experience and how they can benefit from it. So in future tools releases, you're just going to see more of Fluid and more of Fluid and more in these future PUM releases that you're going to see. Next question, to what extent is Campus Solutions fluidized? So Campus Solutions, I believe, just released image 1 for 9.2 with some Fluid content. I haven't had a chance to look at that. That's just getting updated in our sandbox environment. If you'd like to see a specific demo on that, I'll be happy to set one up for you once we have that. I think we should have that available by the middle of next week. So I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I do believe there is some content. So look for PUM image 1 for CS9.2 on support, Oracle support, and you will see what Fluid features have been delivered there. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. If there are any more questions, I'll hang around for another minute or so. It looks like we are exhausting our list of questions. In terms, just a quick pointer or two on Fluid deployment. So consuming delivered Fluid applications or content just takes your internal team or your managed services provider or your hosting provider to install that and configure it. And everything is documented, so not a whole lot of work there. But beyond that, some of the projects that we've been involved in, I can tell you from experience that if you're looking at creating reporting home pages or dashboards, you are really looking at taking stuff that you have and converting that into fluid. So shorter turnaround cycles, 2 to 4 weeks of development and testing and deployment, not extended, a month-long or 6-month-long projects that you would have with other customizations. So it's easy to deploy. It's fairly quick to turn around, and once you get the hang of it, you may, very well consider developing a lot more in Fluid going forward, as opposed to developing it in the classic UI. So think about that. Think about some of the newer constructs that have been available in PeopleTools 8.5.2 onwards. So related content, the activity guides, master detail pages, and now simplified analytics. Incorporating all of that into your development methodology and your design process will just make your PeopleSoft application that much better. And I'm sure your business users will appreciate seeing that kind of a screen as opposed to just a regular classic screen that they've been seeing for years. With that, I'll conclude. Thank you all. I'll take all of these questions and provide an FAQ in the coming days, along with a link to the webinar presentation and recording. And as I said before, if you have any questions, please contact us. The phone number is on your screen, 925-924-1402. Email us at info@bsinstitute.com. And please visit our website, www.bsinstitute.com. We post a lot of new information there through our web pages, through our blogs, and then it also tells you where we are going to be available for in-person meetings. So the next conference that we're going to see, we're going to be at is Collaborate, which is next week in Las Vegas. And then after that at HIUG in San Antonio, Texas, a healthcare conference. So for those of you who are going to be at the conference, at Collaborate, we're at booth number 634. Feel free to stop by and say hello and ask us more questions. So thank you and good luck. Bye. Booth number 634.